The quick menu is a quick way to access some of the most frequently used controls that are buried in the menu system or could be placed someplace else on the camera. So if you want kind of one central place to go change many of those main functions, it's going to be the quick menu. So on the back of the camera, we have our Q button, which activates the quick menu. Now this is the standard quick menu screen that we're going to be talking about in this section, but there is a secondary quick menu that you can see here, and this is a customizable one. And let me just show you on the back of the camera exactly how these come up and why some come up and some don't. All right, so this is your standard quick menu, and the info button cycles through the different options of the viewfinder here, all right? Well, when you can see your subject, like here, and you press the Q button, it does bring up a quick menu, but this is the customizable quick menu, and you can navigate and change a lot of different features in here. Now, there is a subtle difference. If I press the Q button, we get out of it. I press the info button and I go to the quick menu here, and I press this one, we can go through this, and we're going to go through this one in this particular section. Now these features differ ever so slightly from the ones when you see the image and press the Q button here. This one is customizable, the other one is not. But in any case, all of the features that we talk about in this section, well, they have settings in the menu that you can get to. Sometimes there's direct buttons on the camera for controlling these. But sometimes it's easier to kind of take a quick glance at the quick menu to see if everything's set the way that you want it to in one location. So let's go ahead and dive into the quick menu and see what we've got here. All right, so first up is our shutter speeds, apertures, and ISOs. And we've already talked about how we change these with dials on the camera, but here this is where we can do it on the back of the camera. And so you'll see the range that you have. And if we do want to go ahead and set this, this is where we're going to use the touch screen on the back of the camera. So we're going to get to the quick menu, press the Q button. Actually, let's get ourselves into a manual mode so that we can have full range of changing these settings. And so you can either use the touch screen or you can use the buttons and dials like the joystick to navigate, and then you can set your shutter speeds back here. Now, I don't think this is quite as easy as the standard way, but sometimes you have the camera mounted on a tall tripod and it's easier to work with the back of the camera, especially with the ability to move the screen out and point it up or down. If you're mounting the camera in an unusual position, this is another good way of controlling these settings in here. And so just different ways of controlling different features on the camera. More options, more solutions to problems. Next up, can't do anything about this. This is just showing you what mode you have in. You're still going to need to press the mode button and turn that dial to make the changes for this one. We've talked about exposure compensation before in the exposure control section, so you can do your exposure bracketing here as well as exposure compensation, something we talked about, as I say, back in section 3. Another feature we've talked about before is flash exposure compensation. A lot of times when using flash, a lot of photographers like to power down that flash for a little bit more natural look. How far to power it down? Well, that depends on a number of factors. You'll need to do a little experimentation yourself. All right, here's one that we haven't talked about so far, picture style. So this is for JPEG shooters. If you're shooting RAW, you're going to get one standard look to your images. And it's going to show you that look. So let's say you shoot monochrome with RAW on the camera. It's going to show you that in the camera, but when you download it, it's going to come off as a standard color RAW image. If you are shooting JPEG and you do want your image to come out looking in a particular style, well, here's where you get to adjust the color and the contrast and the various parameters as to how it looks. And so the preset options in here are fairly subtle on screen, probably for this class video. But once you take a look at these a little bit more closely yourself, you'll see that portrait and landscape are very different. Obviously, monochrome is probably the largest, most different one here. And so if you are wanting to get your image a little bit closer to what you want in the final version and you're shooting JPEGs, you can come in here and select any one of these options as kind of a default option. Now, as you can see on screen, as you dial through these things, there is an option to hit the info button for detail settings. And this is where you can go in and can control the sharpness, the contrast, and the color of your image so that you really get the right image you like. I do get a little kick every once in a while out of reviews on camera. And every once in a while, somebody has a review that says they don't particularly like the color that they're getting out of their camera. Well, if they're shooting JPEGs, you have a lot of control of it here. You, of course, have a lot of it control in post-production, especially if you shoot RAW. But if you're trying to get something straight out of camera and get it to look just the way you want, well, you can dive right in here and make those changes. We've talked a little bit about white balance before, so we have our different white balance options in here. So I usually leave it set to auto and then kind of adjust on an as-needed basis from there. Next up is white balance shift and bracketing. This is a feature that I don't think gets used very much, and probably for a good reason. First off, if you shoot RAW, you probably don't need to use this at all because you can adjust this in post-production very easily. If you shoot JPEGs, then I suppose you could use this. I just haven't seen a lot of people have the need for it. But if you are shooting with a particular white balance and you want to shoot a series of photos, a bracketed series of white balance photos, you could come in here and shoot a series of photos that would have slightly different color to them. And that could be good in a unique situation where that is the solution for it. But this is just a feature that a lot of people don't tend to use. Next up is our metering mode. We talked about this back in section 3. Most people, as I say, are going to leave it in the evaluative metering because it's just very good, versatile metering system for a lot of different types of light. Next up is our drive mode. We talked about this back in section 5 on the drive settings. Single shot, going to be there for a lot of general photography, but then those high-speed continuous modes is where this camera, well, is really showing what it can do. Next up is focus area. So if you want to change your focusing area, there was the option of the button on the back of the camera. Let's say you wanted to reprogram that button to do something else. Well, then here's another way for you to get in here and control that particular feature. Do note that when you press the info button, you can enable the tracking option or not. Another focus control, AF operation, allows you to switch between one shot and servo. This, as I said before, is the first change I make when I go out to photograph things that are moving around, birds in flight or sports photography. Want to get that lens tracking subjects moving towards me and away from me. Next up, another new one here is Auto Lightning Optimizer. This is for people shooting JPEGs who want to have the shadow areas of their image brightened up a little bit and to have the camera kind of watch out over those highlight areas. So in this particular mode, what the camera will do is it will take your JPEG images and it will adjust them the way a photographer might adjust them, at least in a few little default options here. And so what this is typically doing is it's brightening the shadows and it's holding the highlights back from becoming too bright. And I think with areas that have lots of shadows and people and you want to see detail in those shadows, yeah, this might be a good idea. But there's a lot of landscape type photos where we want contrast. A lot of other types of images beyond landscapes where we do want contrast in our images and we do want our shadows really dark. And so this is something that I would not want turned on in these situations. And this is where overall RAW is better, but if you need to or must shoot JPEGs, be careful about whether you use this or not. I think it works well on some images, but not on all. So test it out yourself, see if it works for you. Next up is custom controls. This is a shortcut to a place in the menu we're going to get to when we talk about custom controls. And in here, you get to go in and you get to customize all sorts of buttons on the camera. And obviously on this camera, there's a lot of buttons that are customizable. I've talked a lot about it. And there's a lot of great ways that you can do some extreme tweaking of your camera. And I'll give you some more specific examples when we get to the custom settings later on in the menu. Next up, a very important setting is your recording function card selection. This is where are you recording information and what format does it follow? Does it go to both cards? Does it just go to one card? We'll talk a little bit more about this in the menu system, but this is where you can quickly see and make adjustments for that if necessary. And maybe the most important setting in the camera is the image type and size. We talked about this back in section 2, whether you're shooting RAW and JPEG. There's a lot of different options. You can shoot RAW and JPEG if you want at the same time, or you can just shoot one. And so generally, I think a lot of people are going to want to shoot in the compact RAW. I think that's very good when you're trying to get the maximum amount of information that you can adjust later on. I think there are certain people that are going to be perfectly fine shooting a large JPEG. I think that's going to work out for a lot of people who shoot through a lot of images and know that those JPEGs are enough. I think fewer people are going to be choosing the medium and small JPEGs, but if you know that you don't need anything more, it is a way to save space on the card. All right, that is the quick menu for still shooting. When you have the camera in the movie mode, well, things change a little bit, not completely, but a little bit. So let's talk about the differences when you are in the movie mode and the items that are a little bit different in there. First up is the sound recording. You can adjust the recording levels that you are getting from the microphone. Now, the built-in microphone, I know it's a really expensive camera and you're very proud of your camera and all, but the built-in microphone on your very expensive camera is pretty terrible. It's just not a very good microphone if you are trying to record professional audio out of the camera. It's kind of nice just to get an idea of what's going on, but it's not a great microphone. But if you need to adjust it, this is where you can dive in and do it. You can also do it in the Shooting Movie 1 menu. Next up is a wind filter for that built-in microphone. That's not so wonderful. If wind is hitting the camera, it is going to sound horrendous. And this will make it sound 1% better, or maybe 2%. If you do have a strong wind and you are trying to get the best quality sound from the built-in microphone, want to turn this on, but you definitely don't want to have this turned on all the time. It just kind of muffles the sound that you are hearing or recording through that microphone. The attenuator is also dealing with the built-in microphone. This is going to dampen and suppress loud noises like fireworks bursts so that it doesn't go out of range. Once again, you probably want to be looking at an external microphone if you are trying to record better quality sound, but if you're stuck with this and you need to deal with it, then this is going to help out if you have really loud sounds that only occasionally come around. All right, this one's kind of interesting, the Movie Digital IS. And so the camera has image stabilization built in, but this is Digital IS. And what it does is it crops in on the frame by maybe 10%. It's a small amount, and then it will digitally stabilize your image. If you're doing a walk and talk and you don't mind losing a little bit of your angle of view and you want a little bit more stabilized image, then this might be worth using. You may want to do some testing to see if you lose any image quality that's important to you. Generally, if you're going to be doing a lot of handheld stuff and you do want to stabilize it, yes, it can help out, but there are some compromises potentially with image quality and with that cropping. Movie recording size is obviously very important. We're going to get into the real details on this in section 9 on the movie, so I'm going to kind of leave a lot of the detailed information for that. There will be settings in the movie shooting menu for going in and doing this, but from changing from full HD to 4K, different frames per second and different compression ratios, you can get these set in here properly, but more about that in movie shooting section. All right, those are your quick menus, both the still and the movie, which are of course accessed with the quick menu button. Great quick reference for how your camera is set up. And that, folks, that's the quick menu.